mixing is more than just kind of flicking faders. The character, the environment, what you're shaping, the atmosphere. I'm thinking about what needs emphasis, what needs enhancement. It requires a lot of putting things into place that, helps the story be told in a very effective and compelling way that helps you kind of create a memory with the song. It's one thing to have a catchy melody, but it's another thing to then create a layer of immersion. And that was my aim with this track, with most of the tracks that I worked on When I See Him. Ruach Hakodesh, where do we start? So obviously with my lead vocal chain, a few people ask me how do I normally go about that. And one of the things that I typically do is I like to do a pre-analysis and just kind of take a listen to see how they were generally holding the mic on that night, because that all contributes towards how, is going to come through in a produced setting. The way the mic was held, like the stereo image kind of changed, or the cardio response kind of changed as well, because it was kind of gripped at a place where, everything's very tight. So there had to be a lot of air injected into the mix and a lot of life injected into it. So this is my main vocal chain. I normally take it through Waves Tune, Clarity, VFX. And like I said, stuff like this is all about enhancement, bringing alive what ultimately was captured on that day. I kind of see this as like photography or videography. You're able to capture the raw moment. And within that raw moment, within the lens, is a memory. And how real can you recreate that memory for someone to understand what it was like to be in that moment in time? I think everything from room mics, one thing I love is just being able to mix room mics, because it just adds that level and sense of immersion. So it's just about adding space. Please come and do what we do in vain. So typically with my vocals, and most of the tracks that are in this, I send them to like a fake room, and everything kind of lives in this fake room, which I title Live Effects. So it's all sent to a bus here, and then there's some processing on here. What does most of the heavy lifting is this plugin, which is CLA Epic from Waves, and it adds a bit of warmth, but it also adds a bit of space. And one of the other mixers that I worked on this project with, EC, shout out to him. Our link is, handled somewhere across the page, but he's just a mastermind. And one thing that he's an advocate for is finding pockets of space and just literally opening up that mix so that everything has an opportunity to breathe, everything has a place to live. And so, dialing that into his own vocal bus, and also into the live sort of fake/real room, is just another layer of immersion, and making it sound live, making it sound like, oh wow, I'm actually here. Where I imagine most people to listen to music like this is when they're on the go, when they're on the commute, in their quiet time. These are things where you need that immersion. You need a convincing performance, not just one that is recorded of a night and it's just a record of it, but it's actually something that's kind of alive and breathing. And I think, the Holy Spirit was quite responsible for a lot of that process. And, mixing with him is just the best thing you can kind of do. Do you get? So with the background vocals, there were some overdubs that we did in the studio, and there were also the live vocals from the night. And I always advise that it's best to do an overdub performance as well, because so much can happen live on the night that can affect or challenge your performance. This was a 2-day conference, so obviously, over the course of 2 days, anything can happen. Someone can lose their voice and stuff like that. So overdubs is just preferred to get the nice, clean take for somebody who hasn't even been to this experience or event or conference. They can understand, okay, this is what they were saying, this is what was happening. And I do love me some clean backups. So this is how I process them. So there was 4 on the day. Please come and do what we do in vain. Prophesy on the drum, Jesse. Come on. Please come and do what we do in vain. Please come and do what we do in vain. Please come and do what we do in vain.
what we do in vain.
So these BBs, they're quite low in the mix, and it's the main overdubs that kind of take over, and they do most of the heavy lifting, and they're just there to kind of reinforce and keep that live feel, because getting rid of the BBs completely and letting all of the overdubs do the heavy lifting. Obviously, doing overdubs, you're in a completely different environment, you're in the studio. Do you get? So I like to just keep both to make sure that they're both getting equal treatment. And I made these quite tight as well. So that higher frequency there that they're hitting is just, obviously all of the plugins that is going through. So we've got pitch correction, just to clean up some notes. Obviously they sang fantastically, but just to make sure everything's in line. And then Vitamin is just boosting some of those, frequencies where your ear is most sensitive. So around about 2K to 4K, that's where the vocal tends to live. I've got Xbox on there. That just kind of opens everything up, but kept it very simple with some reverb, a little bit of tone, a lot of air, so that nothing really sounds too flat and everything still has that energy. And one thing I love and I think is very important about mixing is maintaining that energy, maintaining that pump. So yeah. When it comes to room mics, I don't usually do much. I think I used to overcomplicate my room mics quite a bit. I realized that obviously they're ambient mics, so they kind of do the job for you, but it's just kind of bringing out that clarity and that room. So this, for me, I used to do a lot to the room mics because I really wanted to get them right, so it would make everything sound better. And the room mics pick up a lot. They pick up the drums, pick up, the vocals in the room, but you want them to capture the crowd. So positioning is very important. So, having conversations with your live sound engineers is the most important thing you can do. But these room mics, creme de la creme. So what really kind of enhances the whole entire performance is I used Ozone 11. It just kind of tailors it towards the vocals and just boosted the gain a little bit there. So it's picking up more of the vocal stem than it is anything else. And also you can hear the people that are closest to it. But a lot of people are clapping and you know what I mean? So it's just good to capture all of that. And then obviously if I had the lead mic and the dubs.
Shout hallelujah to the Lord.
And then the dubs on the day.
Shout hallelujah to the Lord. Shout hallelujah.
And that's the whole entire, vocal performance that you got there. So very simple. Obviously, we could talk about my vocal chain, which is quite thorough. But everything is just about enhancement, cleaning up. That's what, this mix was all about. And I think as a mix engineer and as a producer, you should often ask yourself the question of what are the two main goals I want to achieve with each mix. Just by listening, you can kind of diagnose what needs to be done. And so you don't end up over processing anything and doing too much or anything as well.